Activate Your Introvert, a podcast by me, John Baker, for entrepreneurs and business leaders, tackling the 33% productivity gap due to ignorance of introversion, helping you unlock more productivity and creativity so you get a better business. In this week's podcast, building an accounting business, selling it, and then building another business despite being an introvert. I'm really pleased to be interviewing Della Hudson. If you would like to talk to me about any of the issues raised in this week's podcast, please get in touch. Or if you'd like me to speak at your conference or work with your team to unlock productivity, I'd love to talk to you. Della, would you like to start off by introducing yourself? And perhaps, I've already given the game away and said that you're an introvert, but perhaps tell us what introvert means to you, because lots of people interpret it differently.
I'm an introvert with social skills, is how I usually describe myself. I have all the coping strategies to pass off in public. I was dragged up as an army brat, which means moving house every 6 months. So walking into a room full of strangers and introducing myself is second nature. It still drains my energy though. So it was lovely later on in life to discover that I identified as an introvert, because all of a sudden I understood myself better and I could then work out the coping strategies for the bits where I was weak.
I'll ask you about those coping strategies in a minute, but fundamentally, for you, you have learnt to go out and talk to people and introduce yourself, but you find it tiring.
Yes, absolutely. I like people. I like spending time with people, but they exhaust me.
And that,
and
in many
some
ways,
exhaust me more than others.
Well, yeah, I can align to that. But in many ways, that's what I would call classic introvert. I said earlier that you've built up and run one successful business, which you then sold, and then you built up a second one. Very, very interested in, from an introvert perspective, what things you've done to help you with that. And B, you've already mentioned the coping strategies that work for you as an introvert. Let's start with the coping strategies.
Yeah, we built up the business. It was an accountancy practice. I did a lot of stuff online, which I discovered accidentally. Social media fits in very well around small children, because you can be on Twitter or whatever and keeping half an eye on your kids to make sure they're not getting into mischief. I then developed it as a deliberate strategy because I found I could communicate with people a lot more easily online and in writing than face-to-face. And like many introverts, I dislike the telephone, partly because it interrupts whatever I'm doing. So we got about a third of our business came through social media. I am always very highly ranked in social media rankings for accountants and accounting influencers. I'm not sure that I say anything particularly clever, but I do chat to people and it builds relationships. So you can do everything online that you would expect to do offline.
So that's actually quite interesting. Lots of people talk about social media and business. Oh, you've got to put this amazing stuff out there and stand out. But you just said that you don't think you do anything different except you chat to people. Tell us a little bit about that.
I do post stuff that I hope is useful, as we all do, but it's also being there and chatting. So if you liken social media to being in a face-to-face situation, you wouldn't just stand in a corner of a networking event and hold up an advert. You would, however painful it is, start chatting to people, and you smile, you say hello, you ask them about themselves, you make small talk about general stuff and about their business. And so you can do exactly the same online, but on your own terms. I do try to combine the two, and where I build up a relationship online, I do try and meet those people, and people I've met at the face-to-face events, I build the relationship online at, like, say, on my terms. It really deepens that relationship. The other way I use social media, because I've got quite an online following, when I do go to face-to-face events, I tend to wear a branded shirt, and I make sure that I look the same. I have my hair down, I have my contact lenses in, the same as all my social media photographs. That means that people come up and talk to me. So I don't have to start those difficult conversations. It might be that you really don't want people talking to you face to face, but for me, I'm okay as long as they open the conversation.
So what you're doing, you're making through your discussions with them on social media, but through them getting to know you a bit on social, you've made it easy for them to approach you and ask you some questions which are meaningful to you, which is genius.
Absolutely. It's a conversation opener. They know me, they say hello. And
then, so you've skipped some of this painful small talk, I guess, which most introverts, of course, don't like.
Yes. Anything we can do to get past that.
Absolutely, yeah. Social media and online has been a really important part in the business strategy that you've worked with, which is good. Is there anything else that's worked really well for you as an introvert?
Not really an introverted thing, but we also used to pull in a lot of business through standing on a stage and speaking. We used to host our own events. I would get a very good speaker to come alongside me, and then I would just do my little bit. So the focus was off me with the second speaker, and we just made sure people were very welcome. Now, how I coped with the actual speaking, you may or may not be able to do it as an introvert, but it's stepping up. It's more like acting, and I can step into the role of an extrovert, and I suspect a lot of people can. So I'm able to do that. And I'm quite comfortable speaking on a subject in which I'm an expert, something that I know inside out. It's really easy. And again, that means that people come and talk to you. People know. So I skip the small talk because they come to me thinking they know me because I've spoken on stage. It's another not very obvious way of building relationships. But again, is to start with the one way, standing on stage.
So you're running events presumably for your target audience in an area, you've got a speaker and you're up on stage as well, which presumably makes people want to come to the event. Having come to the event, they know a bit about you, so they can approach you rather than the other way around.
Yeah, absolutely. It's putting the expertise out there. So there's no small talk. It's just talking about something that I think is useful, which is it's a step on from writing about something that I think is useful. But again, it's just presenting that information in a different format. It's not about me. That's
genius, yeah. And there's the important piece again. There's lots of really great pieces coming out of here, so thank you, Della. But as you just said, you're presenting something or you're writing about something. It's not about you. It's about what you're an expert in, which makes it, I presume, much more comfortable for you and obviously much more valuable for the other person. So earlier you also talked about your life when you were dragged around, perhaps when you were younger in the army. Well, I think you were an army brat, I think you described it as.
Yes.
And where you had to suddenly be dumped in a situation, and despite being an introvert, you learnt to introduce yourself and get into bits of conversation. As you look back on that, is there anything that you'd say, I learned that taught me X, Y, Z that people listening might find useful?
I think one of the things I learned is that people ask the same questions and want the same information initially. So you can not quite script them, but you know the answers. You don't have to think about them. And then if it's down to you to take the initiative to start a conversation, well, just think about what people ask you and you can open a conversation by asking those things. I mean, we're British. We always talk about the weather. It's a stereotype, but we do it. Let's do that, introduce yourself and ask what they do for a living. What's their business do? How do they help people? You can ask them about their journey to the venue. Have you been to this event before? So many things. I try and encourage some of my team to go out and network as well. Being accountants, they weren't very keen, but where they were willing to have a go, we'd give them, a dozen questions that they could have a try, that they could have in their arsenal to pull out to open those conversations before they started flowing more naturally.
So there's a couple of things that came out of that. What you've learned is that lots and lots of people ask similar questions at events like this. Having realised that people will ask similar questions, you can prepare answers in your head beforehand. That also gives you a script, if I can put it like that. I don't mean it, you must read it verbatim, but that gives you a script that you can use if you were to need to approach somebody, I presume, and you've adapted it that bit further so that you can help your team to go out and do networking because you've given them some of these questions as well. Another interesting question that just came up, because you just mentioned the staff that you have. How many staff did you have working for you in your
We
last
had
business?
8.
Okay, so you've got 8 staff working for you, and you're an introvert. Now, although I think the following statement is rubbish, lots of people say to me things like, oh, if you're an introvert, you can't manage staff and you can't be a leader. Clearly that is rubbish because you've just done it. What tips would you offer people to help them manage staff? If I'm an introvert, how can I be better at managing a team?
It's a learned skill to some extent. I'm lucky. I do like people, so I'm interested in them. I had a business coach whose specialism was in people skills. We used the DISC profiling system. So we DISC profiled the whole team and worked out their sort of profiles, my profile, and everybody was willing to share those profiles and see how we would best work together. I know DISC profiling, it's not pure science, but it's pretty good at giving you some ideas on how to work with people and different personalities.
So very much the team thing about understanding the people that you're working with. And of course, that actually plays to an introvert's strength about looking at some of the details and understanding people as opposed to just talk. One other question, you mentioned earlier about what I would call social drain. So you spend a lot of time with people and then like many introverts, I'm de-energized. Any tips to either lessen that effect or to recover from it more quickly?
I don't really know a way to reduce that. I know a lot of introverts try and pace themselves through events, but I find once I'm in extrovert mode, then I will just carry on with that. And at the end of it, I'm absolutely shattered. With my own work, I used to try and put all my meetings on one day so that I would do the extrovert thing, and then I'd have a quiet working day the next day, which would help me to recover that energy if I didn't have to deal with people. I sort of exclude my team from that because they were fairly understanding.
They become close. Yeah. Okay. So now that's really interesting. So there would be times when you would deliberately, as I can put it, act as an extrovert, and you, as much as possible, condense that into one period of time so that you didn't have to be kind of doing it across the weeks, which helps you to recover and do real stuff for the rest of the week. I'm going to quickly summarize what the main points you've spoken about are. You focused a lot on online communication, and a third of your business came through social media and the online world. You've focused on running events where you had a speaker and you would speak. One of the big things about that being you would be there, you would be in the light, but not in the spotlight, if I can put it like that. That makes both the online stuff and the events makes it easy for people to come and talk to you rather than for you to go and have to talk to people. Again, making it easy for people to get to know you. And your social media has focused on lots of chat rather than just pushing out the same old message. Della, you've been a star. I love those tips. Thank you very, very much. If some of the listeners here wanted to get back in touch with you, how would they do that?
I'm usually on Twitter. I'm down as Della Hudson FCA, or through our website, hudsonbusiness.co.uk.
That's fantastic. Della, thank you very much for your time today. Thank you.
Thanks, John.
Thank you for listening to Activate Your Introvert, and I hope you've enjoyed this week's episode. I'd love to see your reviews on the iTunes store. Thank you once again, and catch up with you next week.